Saint Augustine, The Harmony of the Gospels, Book 2, Chapter 21, of the order in which the narrative concerning Peter's mother-in-law is introduced. Number 51. Matthew proceeds in the following terms. And when Jesus had come into Peter's house, he saw his wife's mother laid and sick of a fever. And he touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she arose and ministered unto them. Matthew has not indicated the date of this incident. That is to say, he has specified neither before what event nor after what occurrence it took place. For we are certainly under no necessity of supposing that, because it is recorded after a certain event, it must also have happened in actual matter of fact after that event. And unquestionably, in this case, we are to understand that he has introduced for record here something which he had omitted to notice previously. For Mark brings in this narrative before his account of that cleansing of the leper, which he would appear to have placed after the delivery of the Sermon on the Mount, which discourse, however, he has left unrelated. And thus, too, Luke inserts the story of Peter's mother-in-law after an occurrence which it follows likewise in Mark's version, but also before that lengthened discourse which has been reproduced by him, and which may appear to be one with the sermon which Matthew states to have been delivered on the mount. For of what consequence is it? What place any of them may give his account? Or what difference does it make whether he inserts the matter in its proper order, or brings in at a particular point what was previously omitted, or mentions at an earlier stage what really happened at a later, provided only that he contradicts neither himself nor a second writer in the narrative of the same facts or of others? For as it is not in one's own power, however admirable and trustworthy may be the knowledge he has once obtained of the facts, to determine the order in which he will recall them to memory. For the way in which one thing comes into a person's mind before or after another is something which proceeds not as we will, but simply as it is given to us. It is reasonable enough to suppose that each of the evangelists believed it have been his duty to relate what he had to relate in that order in which he had pleased God to suggest to his recollection the matters he was engaged in recording. At least this might hold good in the case of those incidents with regard to which the question of order, whether it were this or that, detracted nothing from evangelical authority and truth. But as to the reason why the Holy Spirit, who divides to every man severely as he will, and who therefore undoubtedly with a view to the establishing of their books on so distinguished an eminence of authority, also governs and rules the minds of the holy men themselves in the matter of suggesting the things they were to commit to writing, has left one historian at liberty to construct his narrative in one way and another in a different fashion, that is a question which anyone may look into with pious consideration, and for which, by divine help, the answer also may possibly be found. That, however, is not the object of the work which we have taken in hand at present. The task we have proposed to ourselves is simply to demonstrate that, Not one of the evangelists contradicts either himself or his fellow historians. Whatever be the precise order in which he may have had the ability or may have preferred to compose his account of matters belonging to the doings and sayings of Christ, and that too at once in the case of subjects identical with those recorded by others, and in the case of subjects different from these. For this reason, therefore, under the order of times is not apparent, we ought not to feel it a matter of any consequence what order any of them may have adopted in relating the events. But wherever the order is apparent, if the evangelist then presents anything which seems to be inconsistent with his own statements or with those of another, we must certainly take the passage into consideration and endeavor to clear up the difficulty. Chapter 22 of the order of the incidents which are recorded after this section, and of the question whether Matthew, Mark, and Luke are consistent with each other in these. Matthew accordingly continues his narration thus: Now when the evening had come, they brought unto him many that were possessed with devils, and he cast out the spirits with his word, and healed all that were sick, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, Himself took our infirmities and bare our sicknesses. That this belongs in date to the same day, he indicates with sufficient clearness by these words which he subjoins, now when the evening had come. In a similar manner, after concluding his account of the healing of Peter's mother-in-law with the sentence, and she ministered unto them, Mark has appended the following statement: And at even, when the sun did set, they brought unto him all that were diseased, and them that were possessed of the devils, and all the city was gathered together at the door. And he healed many that were sick of various diseases, and cast out many devils, and suffered not the devils to speak, because they knew him. And in the morning, rising up a great while before day, he went out and departed into a solitary place. Here Mark appears to have preserved the order in such wise that after the statement conveyed in the words "and at even," he gives this note of time: and in the morning, rising up a great while before day. And although there is no absolute necessity for supposing either that when we have the words "and at even," the reference must be to the evening of the very same day, or that when the phrase "in the morning" meets us, it must mean the morning after the same night, still, however that may be, this order in the occurrences may fairly appear to have been preserved with a view to an orderly arrangement of the times. Moreover, Luke too, after relating the story of Peter's mother-in-law, while he does not indeed say expressly "and at even," has at least used a phrase which conveys the same sense. For he proceeds thus: Now when the sun had set, all they had any sick with various diseases brought them unto him, and he laid his hands on every one of them and healed them. And the devils also came out of many, crying out and saying, You are Christ, the Son of God. And he, rebuking them, allowed them not to speak, for they knew that he was Christ. And when it was day, he departed and went into a desert place. Here again, we see precisely the same order of times preserved as we discovered in Mark. But Matthew, who appears to have introduced the story of Peter's mother-in-law, not according to the order in which the incident itself took place, but simply in the succession in which he had it suggested to his mind after previous omission, has first recorded what happened on that same day, to wit, when even had come, and thereafter, instead of subjoining the notice of the morning, goes on with his account in these terms: Now when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, he gave commandment to depart unto the other side of the lake. This then is something new, differing from what is given in the context by Mark and Luke, who after the notice of the even bring in the mention of the morning. Consequently, as regards this verse in Matthew, now when Jesus saw great multitudes about him, he gave commandment to depart unto the other side of the lake, we ought simply to understand that he has introduced here another fact which he has had brought to mind at this point, namely the fact that on a certain day, when Jesus had seen great multitudes about him, he gave instructions to cross to the other side of the lake.